How can we be content? Welcome to the Summit Study Hall. I'm Dre, and with the help of some scripture, we'll dive into that exact question today. So let's get right down to it. We'll look at 5 verses from the Bible, which may be able to guide us toward becoming truly content. Verse number 1, Philippians 4:11. Not that I was ever in need, for I have learned how to be content with whatever I have. So our first answer, how to be content, by appreciating that which we do have in spite of what we don't have. It sounds common sense, and it is, because it's so easy to get wrapped up in the material side of things in life. Looking at what he has or what she drives or wears or whatever, it can quickly start to feel like we're living in a rat race to compete with one another for the best everything. But really, the only race we're truly in is the one with ourselves, in trying to become the best version of ourselves possible. That's it. So when we can appreciate the things that we've been blessed with, we can shift the focus from what someone else has and becoming truly content with what we have. This verse also lets us in on a great line of thinking, that when we are content with what we have, we learn to stop thinking that we actually need this or that or the other. We can look around us at what we've been given and say, yes, that's enough right there. That's all I truly need to make it another day of this season or chapter. It may not always be what we need forever. Other periods of our lives may require more. But when we choose to live in God and His Word, we can completely rest assured that will always be provided for, no matter what's going on around us or in our lives. Verse number 2, Proverbs 15:16. Better to have little with fear for the Lord than to have great treasure and inner turmoil. So our answer, by realizing that being content and happy is more important than being well off and miserable. This verse really weighs 2 opposing viewpoints against one another. That of the inner riches versus the outer riches. Which is truly more important? If we had to choose one over the other, most, if not all of us, would choose inner riches, with good reason. Being at peace with ourselves and our situation allows us to live happily, no matter the amount of material things we acquire. Living to only accumulate more outer riches takes our focus off of what's really important in life, which is to serve and love God. Another good point this verse makes is that we should be fearing and loving God in all that we do. That in itself is what brings about those inner riches we'd mentioned. That's one of the main points of life, if not the most important, to recognize God as God and accept His teachings, mercy, and love. When we can do that, it won't matter how much or how little we actually have to our name. We'll be happy. And that's something that can't be bought. Next verse comes from 1 Timothy 6:8. So if we have enough food and clothing, let us be content. Our answer, by knowing that if the basics are there, the rest will fall into line. So many times we look at these extravagant things and wonder why we don't have them ourselves. But when we shift that attention to our immediate situation and realize we're clothed, that we had enough food to eat today, that we can even breathe the air around us, that's when the rest will come along. How can God trust us with a lot if we don't respect the little? We're all blessed in our own ways. And when we can be grateful for those everyday, average things, we'll be granted the opportunity for above and beyond average things. Verse number 4. Hebrews 13:5. Don't love money. Be satisfied with what you have. For God has said, I will never fail you. I will never abandon you. Our answer? By recognizing that God's reliability is worth more than all the treasure in the world. Nobody would trade God's favor for the world itself. What would be the point? Where's the blessing of having everything if God is nothing in our lives? Without Him, there are no blessings. There is nothing worth striving for if we don't keep Him front and center. To place our love on chasing something as fickle as the treasures of this world is to push God and His teachings aside. So while it's good to further ourselves along our individual paths in life, we still need to remember why we've been given life in the first place. And that's to glorify God. When we can be satisfied with what we've been given, God rests happy and knows that we're people of excellence, worth His blessings and favor. We can't ignore the second half of this verse either. I will never fail you. I will never abandon you. Those words and that promise is itself worth more than all of the riches in the world. God saying, if you need more, I will provide more. I will never forget about you. So to know we serve such a loving God only makes us grow fonder of Him and of the blessings we've already been given. Last verse, we go back to 1 Timothy 6:6. Yet true godliness with contentment is itself great wealth. So our last answer, by realizing we're already rich with God's love, mercy, and favor. We can strive to get more and more, to reach higher levels and acquire more influence. But we can't forget that as soon as we gave our lives to Christ, we were instantly given the greatest treasure of all, salvation. With that comes God's teachings, and through those comes godliness. When we can be content in those things themselves, we'll have already reached the highest plateau possible. Finally, the ability and maturity it takes to be content with whatever we do currently have will only show God that we're ready for more. it'll show him and the world as well that we're happy no matter what we have or don't have, which is precisely the type of person who is usually blessed with that much more. It's a cycle of selflessness and spiritual rewards. When we don't live focused on our own needs and wants only, that's when they'll be met with an overflowing amount of favor. And how can we not be content with that? So let's recap. How can we be content? By appreciating that which we do have in spite of what we don't have. By realizing that being content and happy is more important than being well off and miserable. By knowing that if the basics are there, the rest will fall into line. By recognizing that God's reliability is worth more than all the treasure in the world. And by realizing we're already rich with God's love, mercy, and favor. So that's pretty much the story today. I again and forever thank you so much for listening. As we continue onward, we'll definitely delve into deeper topics that go beyond faith and spirituality only. But for these initial installments, I just thought it'd be a good idea to have these concepts set the tone for any future episodes or talks, because you can't go wrong when looking up scripture. So that'll do it today. I appreciate all the support, and will continue to deliver these bite-sized episodes as often as possible. Love you.